Very excited to have Bruce from NASDAQ to join me for a little chat about the public markets and about, I believe, also your new product development and what's happening, especially in the illiquid side.
Definitely.
So Bruce, thanks for joining NOAH. Tell us about what you do at NASDAQ.
So for the last 11 years, I've been running the listings business at NASDAQ, so attracting companies to NASDAQ, as well as making sure that we have great relationships with the companies that are traded on NASDAQ. But about 2 weeks ago, I became vice chairman of the company, so I still will work with a lot of listed companies, but I'm helping more on a global scale with the company.
And where you work from?
I'm currently based in New York, but I'm moving to San Francisco next month. San Francisco and Silicon Valley is a major market for NASDAQ, so we've decided that we want to have an executive on the West Coast, so I'm moving out next month.
Okay. And I guess the most obvious question for an entrepreneur who decides to list the company, who made the decision to list the company, he's above that decision, where do I list?
Right.
And where can I list? So let's assume to start that you cannot list everywhere. What are the conditions to list at NASDAQ, for example, for a European business?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think there's many conditions. I think, when you look at what investors want, and they want to know that you have some predictability that you can see into the next 12 months when you're predicting your revenues. So predictability is a big thing that the U.S. investors are going to want to see. So we've been very impressed by the European companies that have come to market. We've had 20 so far from Europe this year, and they've done very well. So we think definitely the markets are open. It's the strongest IPO that we've seen on NASDAQ since 2007. So we're encouraged by what we're seeing.
But do you need to have a U.S. office as a European company to be allowed to list there? Is there any listing regulations people should be aware of?
Well, I think obviously you have to comply with the SEC as a regulator, so you have to meet their standards. I think one of the things that's great about the U.S. market is that you do have the ability to work with the SEC before you go public, so in a confidential manner, so you can kind of work through all the processes before you actually have to file to go public. And I think that's a positive. When we see more companies take advantage of that, it's been called the Jobs Act that was launched about 2 years ago. We've seen more companies take advantage of that. So I think definitely you've got to be ready from a regulatory standpoint. And then I think it's really about, again, having the ability to go out. The other thing that's come out with the Jobs Act is you go out and test the waters. So we see companies that will go out and do a mini roadshow, and they'll meet with investors to see how the investors are understanding their story before they go public. So I think that's also been a great advantage for the U.S. markets. So
when you decide to list, and you have a few options, your local market, like for UK business, you could list at LSE, you could list at NASDAQ, Euronext, Deutsche Börse, etc. Give us now, like the top 3 arguments why to list on NASDAQ, apart from that this is obviously the original platform to go for as a tech company, and it used to be and still is the place to have a gross capital company listed. But when you make your pitches to, the King.coms of the world, what are you telling them?
Well, I think U.S. markets are still the most liquid markets in the world, and NASDAQ is home of tech. We've got obviously Apple, Google, Facebook, all great tech companies are listed on NASDAQ. And really what you have in the U.S. markets is the ecosystem to support these companies once you go public. So you want the analyst coverage. You want as a CEO, you want to go in and talk with investors that understand your technology and your business. And that's what you're going to get in the U.S. So you're going to get a better valuation, you're going to get better analyst coverage than you're going to see. And that's what we've seen that with, just here in the UK, you saw Market go public earlier this year. They raised $1.3 billion, very successful fintech IPO on NASDAQ. So NASDAQ is still definitely the place where tech companies go. And as I said, we've seen 20 companies from Europe, most of those in the tech sector. And we do have companies like Sonova, which is spinning out from Casino next week. All of their revenues are in France, but they're listing on NASDAQ because they're an internet e-commerce retailer. And that's where they see their peers, that's where they see the analyst coverage, and that's where they see the investors that will understand their story.
I looked at that IPO prospectus by accident, more or less, and I was amazed that a business with hundreds of millions of negative cash flow, I guess it was in the perspective. I think there was an EBITDA, but then there was a lot of cash outflow, and I was scratching my head and it's also a discussion we are having later with the founder of GLG. I mean, as a company, financially, what do you need to have to go public? I mean, I'm coming from the old world where valuations are linked to cash flows. How can a company, you think, like this go public?
Well, I think that's, you know, the U.S. understands investment, and they understand that in order to grow a business, you've got to continue to invest. I mean, look at Amazon, look at Salesforce. Yeah. These are all companies that continually invest in their business to grow. So I think that's one reason you see a company like Sonova come to the U.S. markets, because they have a longer-term view, and they do want to see companies investing.
That's interesting. Yeah? So one of the reasons why Wix from Israel, etc., they go to the U.S. because, unlike me, the investors there understand that negative cash flow today does not necessarily mean more negative cash flow in the future, but it means positive cash flows in the future, justifying high valuations.
Yeah, they're believing in the technologies and the opportunity for long-term growth. They also understand that you have to invest. You know, you look at one of the sectors that has been the strongest on NASDAQ this year, it's been the biotech sector. All those companies are in drug trials. They need money to invest, so they've been raising a lot of capital. We've had 70 biotech IPOs this year, and not only from the U.S., but from Europe and from Israel as well. Israel's been a great market for NASDAQ over the years. It's actually one of our largest markets outside the U.S. We have 90 companies from Israel listed on NASDAQ.
And you see an increasing trend of European or non-U.S. company going to list on NASDAQ?
Definitely. I mean, I've been doing this for a while now, and you know, when the regulations came in place, we had Sarbanes-Oxley. A lot of companies in Europe delisted from the U.S. Now I think Europe's kind of caught up from a corporate governance standpoint, from a regulatory standpoint, and then it also gets to, you know, companies and CEOs want to know that they've got the, if they're spending their time and they're going to sell their company, they want to make sure that they have the right investors that understand their story, that are long-term minded, and they want to make sure they have the analyst coverage so that when they do go public, they're analysts covering their story and understanding their story. So I think that's why we've seen such a big pickup in IPOs for NASDAQ from Europe this year.
We have been talking in the past about what NASDAQ is doing on the non-public, on the illiquid side, and I guess we Europeans have been always quite jealous following what happens to startups in the US even before they go public. Right. There's a very vivid trading going on of shares, mm-hmm. and my understanding is that your company is excited to bring something like this to Europe, so startups, entrepreneurs, employees can sell shares pre-IPO through an organized fashion, through a platform, and I think it's a little bit delayed because the regulatory side seems to be quite challenging in Europe, but can you tell us what the product is and when we can start selling NOAH shares?
Yeah, no, we have the ability to sell in Europe as long as you guys are the ones soliciting us. So we launched the NASDAQ private market in March of this year. The idea is that we will allow companies, the truth of the matter is the average public company today has been private for 8 to 9 years. They do have liquidity challenges. They have, you know, London and San Francisco are very expensive places to do business. And the engineers want some liquidity so they can buy homes, buy cars. So the NASDAQ private market allows the company to control their shares, allow some liquidity for their employees, allow some liquidity for early investors, and while they're still staying private. So we have about 20 companies on the platform. We also bought a company that does one of the biggest, as we've looked at the private space, another big pain point for companies is cap table management. And we were shocked to find out that the average private company managed their shareholder registry through an Excel spreadsheet with their law firm. So we said that doesn't make sense in today's technology world. So we bought a company called Exact Equity, and now we have a software solution for managing your shareholder registry. And that obviously allows you to create liquidity if you want, or eventually go public. And so we are getting involved early on. We think it's the natural place for NASDAQ to be, and we're excited about it.
Excellent. And in Germany or the UK, when do we anticipate ability to have like shares trading?
Well, we definitely have the ability for companies to take their liquidity programs to the U.S. or to manage their shares through Exact Equity. So that product...
So Criteo pre-IPO could have sold shares in the U.S. already?
If they approached us, they could, yes.
Good. Well, I guess the next Criteo will approach you in time. Thank you very much, Bruce, for sharing a vision.
My pleasure. Thank you.